All right, let's move to the Chargers now. You touched on them earlier. They looked bad yesterday. No two ways about it. Now, Seattle surprised a lot of people this year. Geno Smith has played well. You have to give him his due. But, boy, they just put it on the Chargers. Chargers suffered 2 more injuries. J.C. Jackson, who got here, got hurt. Got healthy, got hurt. And Mike Williams, who seems to run into injury problems. That is an enormous loss for the Chargers. Justin Herbert looks human. And, man, you see what happened yesterday. Now, Kansas City won, so they're game up now. But you see what happened to the Chargers yesterday, and you're going, it might be tough for them now. And I thought they had a roster that could win the Super Bowl at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, it's going to be tough for them because, first of all, they can't stay healthy. And you could see certain guys. Same thing with Justin Herbert, just hadn't been right the whole season long. I think you can tell that those ribs have been bothering him. He'll never say it. He'll never use that as an excuse, nor with the Chargers. But he's not quite the same guy right now that we expected him to be. And then as a team, they're banged up. They go into every week. They're going into, and I'm not talking about one guy here and there. I'm talking about multiple key guys that are banged up, questionable to play. And if they are playing, they're playing on one leg or they're limping around out there. And so it's just, I don't know if they can overcome that because it has been a pattern this entire season. We're in week 7, right? So it's been happening every week. What makes you think that it's going to stop now? Well, they got more guys. Mike Williams got injured. I believe he's out for a minute. And J.C. Jackson is out probably long-term now. So I don't know how you overcome that when key guys are continuing to miss games on a regular basis.
And Rodney, you said I got to go back to what I said from the beginning of the season when the Chargers started getting hurt. Now you see what Anthony Lynn was going through. When we talked about this, we kept saying his team is beat up 2 years in a row. It's almost unfair to him. It's almost unfair to Brandon Staley. But you can't see when he can't control injuries. You can't control that. And once again, people feel like, well, they got the backups. Man, they're not the same as the starters. They're not able to run the football. You hear Austin Eckler talking about with no running game. When you ain't got no running game, things change. Look at the Kenneth Walker III yesterday. Had 168 yards on 23 carries on a 74-yard run. He went wild on them. Man, you want to play? He'd be like, I like to play the Chargers again next week. When you can't stop the run, when you can run the football, it just makes you a totally different football team. It just helps so much. And the teams that the Chargers have beaten, they beat the Raiders. I think 24-19. They beat the Houston Texans, and they beat the Cleveland Browns. So, and then I think they beat the Denver Broncos. So they haven't really beaten anyone, even though they're NFL teams. But if you look at it, you're like, they ain't really played nobody. When they played Kansas City, they lost to the Chiefs. They lost to Jacksonville. I mean, and then get beat up by Seattle. So
yeah. It's like they don't have you can't figure out their identity right
Identity,
now.
right.
Yeah,
they're just like the Rams. The Rams have no idea. They don't know what they have no identity.
Yeah.
But sometimes your identity comes when it comes sometimes third or fourth week of the season. But when you have injuries, when you have major injuries to your star players and starters, starters who are playing well, man, it changes the whole dynamic of your football team.
Yeah. Yeah. It just, man, for them and supposedly being this great defensive team, they sure have given up a lot of yards and a lot of points defensively, which that was, to me, the strength of the team. And going back to identity, it was the strength of the team, but then they could offset that by the play of Justin Herbert. And he really hasn't played that well. But defensively, they can't let somebody go for 168 yards on a defense like that. At home?
I say at home, they got humiliated at home, really. That game wasn't even really close. To be honest, they jumped out on 17-0, and they never looked back. But like I said, when you can, and you know this as well as I do, and it goes hand in hand, Rodney. If you throw in the football well, it makes the running game that much easier, and vice versa. If you run the football, it makes the throwing, it makes the passing game, because now all of a sudden the play action becomes a real play action, and Seattle could kind of do what they wanted to do yesterday.
Brandon Staley is a defensive coach.
Yeah.
That's where he earned his chops. And to see the defense shredded the way it is, even with the injuries, I think is kind of surprising. He's a defensive coach.
So? And I don't mean nothing. And remember this, Fred. Those are pros on the other side of that ball too. I think people have to forget that. Those are professionals over there. Those guys on the other side of that ball, they are pros.
Yeah,
I mean,
and you can get caught up into the defensive coach this and defensive coach that. But let me tell you something. A lot of people can be a good defensive coach when you coaching Aaron Donald.
That's a good point.
Thank you. Or you coach
Eric Dickerson. You're a great running back coach coaching Eric Dickerson. You don't have to do nothing.
Yeah. Or you coach the 85 Bears defense.
Yeah. You're a great D coordinator. So, a lot of it plays into it.
Yeah, but I mean, Derwin James is back. I mean, guys are there. You have Khalil Mack now. Why would it be as bad this year as it was last year? Now, granted, Bosa's out.
Yeah.
We acknowledge, but you got Khalil Mack now.
Yeah, that's one guy. You know, the thing is, Khalil, this defense is new for Khalil Mack. It really is. I mean, somebody said something to me that was really different, not different, but just kind of eye-opening. We're talking about my friend Jeff Arad that played for the Indianapolis Colts. And we're talking about, when guys come into a new defense, and I forgot it was a guy that came in to play on the defense. I can't think of his name. And he said, Jeff had to line him up every play. He was a linebacker. And some guys, you see, sometimes, Fred, just it's not out there. You're not out there just going to the ball. You have assignments. And sometimes guys don't know where they're supposed to be. And if it's a new defense, they're not used to it yet. They're not used to this scheme. They're used to that scheme. And like I say, the terminology may be different. I'm not saying that's happening with the Chargers, but it could be. Guys, you're not playing. You're thinking too much. You can't play football and think. It's got to be reaction. It's got to be, I know I'm going, I know what I'm doing, and I'm just reacting. I can't think about, do I have outside leverage now, or do I supposed to be inside? Is that my gap I'm supposed to be? No, you're supposed to be over here. You can't think like that, and that could be happening with a lot of new players on that football team.
Yeah, and you mentioned Khalil Mack. You're talking about Khalil Mack. It makes a difference when Bosa's there on the other side, and you can't double Khalil Mack, or you can't double Bosa on one side. When one of them's gone, it makes it a lot easier on that offense because you only got to really worry about one guy that could wreak havoc on your offense. With him out, they can just focus in on Khalil Mack and neutralize him and do whatever they want to do. As you saw, ran up and down the field on that Charger defense.
Yep, that's one guy.
You can't really evaluate Brandon Staley now, can you, as a coach, given the injuries?
Yeah. He went for the fourth down again and lost it in his own territory. I mean, I don't get it. I still don't get it. It's like he still hasn't. And I get, he want to stick by his guns, and that's the way I coach and do everything. But just like it bit him last year, it's going to continue to bite him.
Yeah, but it ain't working. They should have been in the playoffs last year on that one call. Both teams were going. The Raiders were going. They were going. And they're like, okay, you want to go for it? Okay, cool.
Yeah, why can't you evaluate him? We evaluated Anthony Lynn before him, and he had he had the injury situation too.
And they were killing Anthony Lynn. They were killing him.
Well, I think, and
Anthony Lynn made the playoffs.
Yeah, but I think in Anthony Lynn's final year, there were some real problems with the special teams, things like that. I mean, that came back to bite him a few times. They didn't have enough guys on the field, and they had too many guys on the field. So, I mean, and then he had to take over the special teams himself.
But wasn't that a joke with the Chargers over the years? Was no matter who was the coach, the special teams, they couldn't find a kicker.
Oh yeah,
for
going
years.
back to Mike McCoy, they had special teams issues.
Yeah,
I was going to say they always had special teams.
Always.
Issues. Yep. And look, you know what? That's why you have coaches. You can blame the head coach, but hey, I'm not the special teams coach, and I won't. Anthony Lynn told me, he said he didn't want to throw nobody under the bus. He took the blame for it, but it was really somebody else's fault. But that's what a head coach does. Look, I take the blame. That's why a coach always stands up and say, we've got to play better. I've got to coach better. No, you know what? They need to get their ass out there and play.
Yeah. JoJo, you can't let them run by you all day long, JoJo.
Right. You can't get beat all the time. I mean,